It's a great honor and even greater pleasure for me to present this case study of Antoinette Krasnik-Sommaruga here, and I would like to warmly thank to all the colleagues and especially to Elana and Anne-Catherine for having me here today with you. The topic of the presentation evokes the question, why have there been no great women artists, posed by Linda Nochlin in far 1971, at the very beginning of the 1970s. It marked the beginning of the end of an era of historiographic narratives dominated by masculine hierarchical stereotypes, labeling decorative art as an implicitly inferior, gender-specific construct. Taking the transnational exchanges in Central European context at the turn of the century as a starting point, this presentation focuses on its formative, multi-layered and controversial relations through the career of Antoinette Krasnik-Sommaruga. By analyzing her career as a case study of women interaction in the field of design, it seeks to answer why this woman artist and designer, together with numerous other women authors of her generation, stayed underexplored and marginalized. Feminist and post-feminist methodology has contributed significantly to changes of the historiographical narrative, starting from Sabine Placom studies to Julie Mary Johnson, contributed fundamentally to unfolding and understanding the status of those female artists. Back to Rebecca House's studied textiles, fashion and design reform in Austria-Hungary before the First World War, representing the further contribution towards the interdisciplinarity focus on the work of female artists in the area of design. These works investigate an incredibly complex and dynamic artistic production and analyze the multiple roles of female identity in the context of cultural production. As exhibition Women Artists of the Wiener Werkstätte has shown, next to the famous male founders, there were almost 200 women artists of the Wiener Werkstätte involved in the Wiener Werkstätte. Although highly recognized at this time, over the years, all these women artists and designers were marginalized and recognized only recently through these studies and exhibitions. And back to the most recent project, Creativity from Vienna to the World, focused on connecting aspects of design and women's history, pedagogy, migration, and cultural transfers, seeking to apply new methodological perspectives on transnational discourses, exploring the work of migrant women who moved to the US from the Central Europe. In my research, I aimed to apply all these previous feminist and post-feminist approaches by engaging with efforts over the past 2 decades to write design history in a global context, but also to expand the research field on transnational exchanges through the relation on the case study of Antoinette Krasnik. So the aim of the research was also to demonstrate how strategies and theories of cross-cultural and transnational exchange may be applied to studies of women in design, shifting the focus away from the power structures from which women have traditionally been excluded to the realm of idea transfers in which they flourished, and to examine the relationship of women to design from the perspective of their personal and professional experience. Starting from the premise that women designers played a key role in the transformation of design practice by exporting new ideas from the capitals in which they studied, especially Vienna, to the network of museums and galleries across the monarchy in which they exhibited and collaborated, this presentation focuses on the case study of Antoinette Krasnik. So who is Antoinette Krasnik? She was born in 1874 in a small village in Lovinac, Croatia, as the eldest of 7 children in an upper middle-class family. Since Zagreb offered no possibility of formal artistic education for women whatsoever, she was forced to move to Vienna, where she entered the core of artistic activities already during her studies at the Kunstgwerbeschule. She was I think it's worth mentioning, the first woman coming from the region of Croatia to receive a state grant for her study. Then she took part at the exhibition of students' work at the Museum of Art and Industry, and from the beginning of her studies, as well as at a number of international exhibitions promoting modern decorative arts and design through Europe, in which her designs were used by Bakalovic, Nzone, Backhausen, Josef Beck, Prag-Rudnicke, Alexander Stung, just to mention the few of the most important. After completing her studies in 1903, she moved to Paris, where she attended lectures given by the protagonists of French Art Nouveau, Eugène Carrière, Maurice Pilar-Vernet, and others, and took part in art and social scene there. All along, she was simultaneously professionally working in the field of design and maintained her close relations with Vienna and Zagreb via bustling exhibition activities and collaboration with mentioned producers. Upon her return from Paris, she continued her professional work in the field of design, but soon after marrying Rudolf Sommaruga in 1907, entering into the distinguished noble family, she stopped working as a designer and very soon completely disappeared from art and cultural scene. She maintained contacts with Zagreb all along through the end of her life, when she returned to Zagreb in 1954 and died there completely forgotten in 1956. However, the fact that Krasnik did not take part in artistic groups or professional associations, nor did she enjoy the support of influential patrons or families, is probably at least partly the reason why her work and career has remained underexplored till recently. It was in the late 19th century that the reforms in the art education system and the new conceptualization of design took place in Vienna as a core of Central European modern culture. Although Mirbach's project to transform the Kunstgwerbeschule failed, it led to the quite interdisciplinary curriculum. This teaching concept is best reflected in the activity of the professors and their students. For example, Moser's students, since their first appearances in the school exhibitions, as well as where the school was featured on the international scene, were frequently noticed precisely on the basis of their characteristics and extremely individualized approaches. Although, during their education, they had articulated quite individual approaches to modern design, these students became known under the name Moser School. Having examined the sources, it is possible to determine at least some of the objects considered by the Moser's design were designed actually by his female students. Still, the label school, which initially referred to the stages of the students, became with time historiographical fact, while the role of the students was very often representing their aestheticized gender roles. Beside periodicals, a key role in the medialization of modern design was fulfilled by the exhibitions, promoting a new phenomenon and educating the audiences from diverse social circles. This promotional and at the same time educational, curatorial and conceptual exhibiting practice reflected the modern understanding of an exhibition as a very effective medium for the popularization of contemporary production, acknowledged by the journals such as the Studio, Art et Decoration, Kunst und Künstler, and others. Thus, the Vienna's Kunstgwerbeschule is an important phenomenon, not only for its educational program and its authors as representatives, but for the promotion of modern cultural transfers and production. Antoinette Krasnik exhibited her work for the first time in the school's exhibition Winterausstellung in 1901 and World Fair in Paris in 1919. In the school exhibition displays, Alignment with contemporary needs aimed at aestheticizing everyday life, singled out as the main objective of the reform program. The basic task of the exhibition was to re-evaluate to what extent the reformed school program corresponded to the demands of the society and the times. So it is quite telling that the exhibits were catalogued by the factories, for example, here, in which they were made, and not by the departments of school or artists themselves as individual representatives of the program. To the exhibition that lent prominence to the Austrian production in the European context, we ought to add the exhibition of Austrian fine and decorative art furnishing in London in 1901. The list of exhibitors in the catalogue reveals that 8 female authors altogether took part at the exhibition, together with 45 male authors, including, among others, Hemmel, Holubetz, Marshall, Moser, and Roller. All the authors were also labeled collectively as designers, suggesting that design took precedence over the fine art at this exhibition. Then we have this shift in the authorial dating, that the objects were attributed to Koloman Moser here, while 2 of these presented here were designed actually by Krasnik. So the process started with marginalizing the design status of the Moser students on one hand, and on the other, while she was in Paris, at the same time her design was presented and published as her work. A particular prominent place in the internationalization of these tendencies in design belonged to International Exhibition of Modern Decorative Art in Turin in 1902, which was the first exhibition dedicated exclusively to this topic. A direct impulse for the organizers to initiate this manifestation was the Paris World Fair, held 2 years ago, before that, when it became clear that Italy was lagging behind the leading European nations of the time in the promoting of the new style. Participants including Austria, Belgium, Denmark, France, Germany, United Kingdom, Hungary, Italy, Japan, Norway, Sweden, USA, and the Netherlands, all of which had their own pavilions and sections. In the review published in the journal The Studio, William Fred gave a critical review of the architecture, which he considered exclusively traditional, but prized the quality of the applied art and design, assessing that Austrian industrial art had achieved recognizable global status and affirmation. He particularly singled out the glassware manufactured by Viennese factories like Lobmeier and Bakalovich, most of which designed by Moser's students. Women's participation at this exhibition in Turin in 1902 was about 16%. Yet, no woman worked as an architect. All the pavilions were designed by men. A few women exhibited individually, most of them participating as members of organizations, schools, museums, and artistic associations. But all the women's participants had an important artistic background and followed studies of art and decorative arts. After the exhibition in Turin, almost all the participating women carried on their activities and businesses successfully. The first occasion in which Moser's female students exhibited their works outside regular school exhibition was the 13th Secession exhibition in February in 1902, while the 15th Secession exhibition in November later that year, decorative arts were presented even more extensively. Displayed adjustment to Joseph Hoffmann's silverware and Moser's glasses was a representative selection of designs by Antoinette Krasnik. So at the same time, through the school exhibitions, we have the second, so parallel, we could say, line of transfers, visible here at Fritz Berndorfer's house, redecorated and reconstructed in the same year when the vase designed by Antoinette Krasnik was posed to the most important place at the entrance of Fritz Werndorfer's villa. Moritz Dreger, who was Riegel's successor at the textiles collection in the Museum of Art and Industry, launched in 1901 an exclusive edition, Wiener Kunststickerei, published by Anton Scholl and Company. Its contents, format and superior print quality significantly contributed to the rise of prominence of female artists, students of the Vienna Kunstgwerbeschule, in modern textile design. Thanks to Dreger, a number of designs published in the journal was purchased for the museum collection, including, among others, a curtain manufactured on a design by Antoinette Krasnik, which had been published in Wiener Kunststickereien in the same year. So at the same time, Antoinette Krasnik was closely connected with her native country, with Zagreb, where variant of secession was at its peak at that time, and she was invited to contribute to the exhibition of artistic society in Zagreb in 1902. And it is quite telling that there is an intensive correspondence with organizers of this exhibition, where, from which we can reconstruct that at that time most of the objects she designed was touring through Europe and the US due to the exhibitions where she participated at that time. So it was the most intensive period of her exhibiting activities in coming to that period. At this exhibition, she was represented by a very extensive selection of objects, and after that the exhibits were purchased for the Museum of Arts and Crafts collection. But it is quite telling that although in the catalogue of the exhibition we can see that this list of items was her designs, in the inventory book of the museum, after they were purchased for the collection, all of these objects were already anonymized. So it is not mentioned who is the author. But due to other archival sources from customs and invoices, it was possible to determine that all these objects now in museum collections are designed actually by her. So in the review of the back to the Kunstgwerbeschule Ausstellung exhibition review published in the Berlin journal Kunst und Künstler, Franz Servais published an exhaustive review in which he particularly stressed again the quality of the extent of emancipation of female designers in the field of applied arts. This was followed by a review of the history of the Kunstgwerbeschule, in which he also pointed out the Moser's contribution to the interdisciplinarity. He together with other reviews, the names of Moser students were labeled as the school again. And finally, we come to the exhibitions where Moser students had the opportunity to represent their work not just as a student, but also as authors. In Salon Pisco, at the turn of the century, one of the most important gallery spaces not belonging to the institutional artistic scene, at this exhibition, Krasnik presented herself as a real multimedia artist. Her section at the exhibition was called My Studio. Within the spatial framework defined by the objects from her everyday life, which she designed by herself, Antoinette Krasnik clearly expressed self-awareness about her own status as a woman artist and designer. This manner of presentation emphasized that there wasn't any difference between the previously separated private and public spheres of work and life. Thus, she presented to the public these two spheres joined into one, which was the first instance of such a programmatic statement. She exhibited furniture with the stylized stencil-painted floral ornaments, iron fittings, while the backrests on the seats were made of a white varnished woven willow wicker. Based on her designs, this furniture was produced in the Prague Rudnika factory, and henceforth it is important to stress that at the same time, the Amelia Sara Levatus in London magazine The Studio published the review where she clearly stressed the authorship and inventiveness of this, so to say, to cite Judy Atfield and Pat Kirkham, A View from the Interior. In the other review of her work, as far as I know, the first of that kind written female history, of art history, Antoinette Krasnik was also included in Anton Hirsch's presentation of this art history, but as not just artist, but most of all as designer. So in the next review, quite exceptional, called In Boudoir, published in Vienna Mode in 1904, dedicated to the work of Antoinette Krasnik, who at that time collaborated with this journal, in a quite lavishly illustrated review, this photograph of her own studio and apartment was published with her, presenting her and her profile, of artistic profile and versatility of her career. In the review illustrated with these two photographs, her portrait is also bearing the symbolic meaning of this self-representing or presenting herself, posing herself in this way, like statement of sorts. In the dress she designed herself, and the objects where she is also crossing the borders of disciplines or in design. One of the last exhibitions where she presented her design was the late table held in the Moravian Museum of Decorative Arts in Brünn in 1904, very often misidentified with the other exhibition of the almost same title held in Vienna 2 years later. The museum director, Julius Leisching, organized an exhibition that promoted contemporary phenomena in decorative arts and design, but in the completely different curatorial, from the completely different curatorial perspective, displaying parallelly installations, not just of aestheticized objects, but also in the installations of their everyday use, and thus counteracted that approach with the exhibition just as autonomous art objects. Upon her return from Paris in the late 1906, Antoinette Krasnik once again exhibited at the Salon Pisco, but this time at solo exhibition. The press reviewed the opening as a social event that shocked the conservative Viennese cultural circus with the introduction of Parisian trends, giving a detailed description of the soirée rather than the exhibited works. Despite the facts that irrefutably prove that Krasnik managed to establish herself as one of the few women authors who acted independently as designers outside institutions and that she, in just a few years, became a professional designer, her work remains almost entirely unknown later. This reason that still lies only in the misogynic power mechanism of cultural politics of Croatia or former Yugoslavia, but also in art history, which still builds its framework around the paradigmatic phenomena of great authors, while assigning to others the status of semi-anonymized attendants of schools or students. Also, in the process of erasing of the role that independent and self-aware women played in the cultural history, even more powerful is the modernist paradigm, which in the 30s excluded all hybrid forms from the sphere of so-called high culture. I would like to conclude this presentation by arguing that the case study of Krasnik-Sommaruga brings into the spotlight the decorative arts as well as crafts perceived as a traditional site of femininity are commonly associated with an image of unthreatening docility. But the artists connected with Vienna's turn-of-the-century modernism and female secession created artworks that disrupted established boundaries between high and low function and utility and masculine and feminine fields of expression. The phenomenon of women intervention in crossing borders recaptures the radical potential of what masculine criticism referred to as works from women's hands, in putting forth an alternative version of transnational modernist discourse that never turned on its ornamental decorative roots. It is precisely this liminal space between masculine and feminine modes of expression that the artist, designer, craftswoman transferred, but which situates so uncomfortably within mainstream modernist narratives centered on the marginalizing of the decorative. Thank you very much for your attention.